cyberpunk style meets skirmish combat in Infinity. Experience 8 high-tech factions and fight to control the human sphere at the Infinity Hub on beastsofwar.com. The new Flames of War 4th edition brings you the battles of World War II in epic 15mm scale. Go to beastsofwar.com to get the latest in news, tactics and tutorials.
Hello everybody and welcome. I have been joined by Paul and Adam from Greater Than Games, and today we are talking role-playing games. So guys, what have you brought along?
So this is the starter kit for Sentinel Comics, the role-playing game.
Sentinel Comics, this is a role-playing game based on a universe you guys have already created for another game, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So Sentinel Comics was created for our flagship game, Sentinels of the Multiverse. It was the first thing that we did, and we wanted to make our own heroes for it, and so we did. Yeah,
and so we've all been big fans of RPGs for a long time, wanted to make a tabletop RPG. So this is set in that world, and the starter kit has pre-made characters and pre-made adventures that are all in that Sentinel Comics world, but the system is also just suitable for any sort of comic book hero combat. So we'll be coming out later this year with a core rule book that tells you how to make your own characters, own adventures, own bits. So if you want to set it in your own comic book universe or one from another publishing company, that's totally fine too. So it totally works. Yeah.
Okay, now, important question. Do I need to know about the Sentinels universe before I drop into this role-playing game? Do I need a good grounding in it, or can I just drop in? Is this the wedge that gets me into the story?
This will get you into the story, but you don't need any prior knowledge. I don't really even think that you gain an advantage by having the prior knowledge. So you can sit down not knowing anything about the universe with someone who knows everything about the universe and be completely on the same page.
So if we show you what's in here, it's kind of cool.
If you pass it over, I'll get it on the camera.
Absolutely. So so first you have a bunch. Here we go. Yeah.
We'll start with the pretty cover, because I always want to show off beautiful artwork whenever an artist has thrown the time and effort into it. And having a look at this, it's got that really nice classic comic book style to it. So we get our sleeve that everything's going to come in, yeah? So front side, beautiful artwork. Back, a little bit of talking about what it is, yeah? Okay, so let's crack it open. So the first thing we come to is this. What are these?
So the first things you have is you're going to have a bunch of pre-made characters. So these are all characters from the Sentinel Comics universe, and these little booklets have all the information you need to run the character.
Okay, and how many characters do we get here?
So you're going to get 6 in this book, so it can play up to 6 players.
Okay, well let's open this one up and have a look inside. So what are we seeing on the first 2 pages here?
So here is what an actual character sheet looks like, but you can see there's annotations over here that kind of explain what every part is, how that works, how you use it in the course of the game.
Okay. Is that everything that's on this page?
Yeah, that's what's on this page.
Literally just where you're going to have all your different stats and tracking components.
And then the rest of that is here. So this is the back of the character sheet. And this is actually the side you'll use during most of gameplay with your abilities and the different dice you'll use. And then this page is a bunch of annotations for that as well.
All right, so basically everything here relates to what's on here. This is where you're going to do your work. This is where, if you're confused, give it a second and give it a read.
Exactly.
Okay, really nice layout. We then move on through to here. What are we seeing here?
So this is the gameplay reference. So while you're playing the game, you can have this book open next to you or between a couple of other players if you're brand new to the game, and it'll tell you how you do really anything during gameplay. Because the game is all about building pools of 3 different dice, rolling them and seeing what happens, and this kind of explains all the different possible actions you can take just on this one.
Okay, and every one of our character booklets is identical. You've got all the same information in there, so you're not having to share so much.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that, because I've came to games before where my DM has only had like one reference sheet and people are passing it around, and then someone sets it on a side table and she's like, where'd the reference sheet go? And you spend like 5 minutes dropping out of it, dropping the immersion of the game. Whenever I play role-playing games, I like to just drop into it and live in the world for the entire session. I hate moments where I get drawn out of it, so having all of that in there is great, because if I need a moment to actually recheck something, I can just do it on the fly while someone else is doing actions and stuff, which is really good.
There's one in each of those books. There's also one in the gameplay guide, so you have an extra one there.
Well, you can, one for your DM.
Exactly. All
right, so
and then the back of it just has some lore, some story stuff. So if you want to know who these characters are in that universe, you can read the back of the booklets.
Very cool. Okay, so I assume we have the classic archetypes of heroes in here. You're going to have your bruisers, your stealth people, your tech people, things like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Next thing that we come along to is this. What is this?
So that's the gameplay guide. That basically tells you all the rules you need to play the game, whether that's as a character player or as the GM. Mm-hmm. So if you're moderating the game, then you can read the whole second section of this book, and it'll kind of introduce you to it. And what's cool to me about this system, and this starter kit in particular, is that we've really geared it toward brand new GMs. So someone who's never run a game before can pick this up, get right into it, and start running the game and learn how to do that.
Ooh, very nice. Okay, now I'm seeing you've changed the colors on the pages here. So we've got a dark blue towards the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing, is this information for everybody?
Yeah, that's info for everyone. So the player should read that first half, and the GM too, to make sure that they know how the game works.
Yeah, we then come to this, which is a reference sheet again.
Yeah, the same as the one in the character book.
Yes.
So.
And then now we come across to the orange pages. I'm guessing GM only?
Yeah, this is the GM only stuff. So you have to read a few more pages if you want to be the GM, but it's not too bad. And it explains how all of the minions and villains and stuff that you're going to run into, how they work.
And, okay, so actually having villains in there, do you just have like regular goons, or can you like create stuff on the fly?
Yeah, you can do all of that. So the game starts out, there's 3 different tiers of opponents that might come up doing stuff that you want to fight or interact with as the heroes. So the lowest level are minions, and minions are always represented by a single die type, and the bigger the die, the harder they are to punch, but they're pretty easy to defeat. You're always going to be able to defeat them. They tend to come in groups. Lieutenants are a little bit harder to defeat, also a single die, but you've got to work at them a little bit more. They might have some special abilities. And then villains are full-fledged, complicated antagonists that are kind of on par with the heroes that you'll be fighting. So.
Gotcha. Now, I like this idea that your GM is very, very able to ad-lib certain things, because I mean, like, say, right, it's the one thing that happens every time you play roleplays. I'm sure if you've GM'd at all, you will have had this happen. You will have carefully, specifically crafted a non-player character who has many bits of information. You could find the most amazing weapons and stuff by talking to this one guy, and they talk to Bob in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, the number of times I've seen that happen. So being able to ad-lib that Bob is now who you were actually meant to talk to, always a good idea. Be flexible as a GM is one of the greatest pieces of advice that I can ever give.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, next thing in the set, we have these. What are these?
Those are adventure issues. So there's 6 issues here. We've constructed in the starter kit a 6-issue adventure path.
Okay.
So since it is a comic book based game, then all of the adventures are structured in issues. And so this gives you a whole story arc kind of through these 6 issues. And the order of them actually is dependent on player choice. So you always start out with the first one and end with the 6th one, but the order in which they kind of go through them, you can see these say 3, 4, 5, and they can be 3 or 4 or 5.
You can jump around.
All right. Well, let me grab issue 1, and we'll get a quick gander inside. So at the start, some nice dark blue text. I'm guessing this is flavor for your players to sit down, read, or your GM to like read out to them.
Yeah, and they can
theatrical like that.
Yeah.
And then
it's all backstory.
This is all backstory?
Yep.
Okay, and the little orange boxes, are they like asides for extra information?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a few different kinds. They're like, this one right here is for, if this particular character is in it, you do this other kind of stuff.
There's 5 of the characters are a standard team in the universe, and one of them is a sort of intern, or previously was an intern, and this tells where she has gone since being an intern with them.
I see. Yeah. I see.
You use some more lore information, ways to tweak the story as a GM if you're running it with that character.
Yeah, and so the story runs up to 6 characters.
Yeah.
What would you say is the minimum comfortable to run?
So you could run it with as few as 2.
Probably
3 is going to be easy.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just it's the one thing I've always found with role playing games. The bigger the group, the more utility you have, but the less time each player gets to play their character.
Right.
Whereas with smaller groups, you have a lot less utility. Battles are a lot harder whenever you get into them.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have so much more time to actually explore narrative and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have the ability for that with
So
this?
you do, and this also scales it with the difficulty scales with the number of players. There's things in there for that.
Yeah, I tend to think 4 is the sweet spot for anything. That like it's going to be the perfect balance of turn time. But I've played this multiple times with 6, and a turn moves at a clip, so you're not spending a whole lot of time waiting for your turn.
Nice.
Yeah,
and you're not going to have people doing simple math for like half an hour.
Right. Exactly.
I've had gaming groups in the past where I've been role playing, and some people just cannot do simple math.
Right.
And it's just, oh my god. You're telling them the number they need, and they're just like, no, but I want to work it out myself. But just
They
roll
don't
the bloody
even-
dice.
You don't even have to add anything.
You never have to. You never really have to do
No
that in
math.
this game.
Really?
So yeah, it's
no
it's
math.
a lot more
Hooray, I
narrative
may have found
driven.
a new
and less
favorite.
yeah.
Okay, so moving on through the issue, I assume we're coming to GM territory.
Yeah, this is all like
leading people through
secret
them.
stuff. So if you're gonna play through it, yeah, this is just for the GM. But what it'll do is it'll give you, it has little sidebars on the side that kind of give you tips if you're new at it. Give you some of those scaling issues we talked about. Some other different options if the characters go this kind of way, that kind of way. And one thing that's important that we always say is like always kind of go along with what your players want to do. Like help them drive the story. And there's a lot of things baked into this system that let the players drive the story and get them talking to each other, including the initiative system even. So the turn order is determined by the players. So when you go as a player, you determine who comes next, and then you determine who comes next. And that includes the GM and the bad guy stuff. You determine when they go in the course of each round.
That's interesting.
So everyone goes once in a row in the round, but the order is always determined by the players.
Yeah. So the players, not the GM, determine this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So why is the GM not always just going to go last?
This is a good question because whoever is going determines who comes next.
Yeah.
So the players can absolutely decide, I'm going to go, and then Adam will go, and then you'll go, and then the GM is going to go last, right?
Yeah.
But then what the GM will do, then the GM gets to go, and whoever goes last in the round gets to pick who starts the next round.
Oh.
So the GM could then have themselves start the next round.
Oh.
So you'd have all the GM stuff, all the villain stuff go twice in a row, which is really rough. So I'm
glad I asked that question.
Yes. Yeah. That's a common question that comes up, and it's fun running the game for the first time as a demo.
Yeah.
I let the players kind of discover that.
They just do that on
right?
their own. Yeah.
Because you'll go and then be like, and then I'll be like, all right, you left me for last. Look what I could do. Look how terrible this would be. And oh, wow, okay. And then they figure out that they need to strategically think about when they're going to let those villain stuff go.
Yeah, so... Yeah. And if the heroes let themselves go last and let the GM take a swing, they can maybe get a double done.
Exactly. Then they can pick who comes next, and they can actually put a gap in there.
So. Stack their turns well.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, now if I split all of this out from the actual cover as well, there's a little bit more in here that I want to ask about.
Yeah,
is this just another reference sheet?
Yeah, that's another reference sheet, and since it's on this stiff cardboard, it doubles as a GM screen. So you can put it up like this, kind of, and then you have an area back here to write out index cards and things. Yeah. Since a lot of this game as a GM is based on, you'll have a stack of index cards. This is how we recommend running it. Where you can write, this is a minion that uses a D6, and you'll write that out here and put it out there. Or you create little modifiers, and the players can create them, and the GM can create them. Things like someone has like some ice armor, or someone has taken metal and made it into a special thing that's a weapon for them, and those act as like
you write
pluses
on a
or
card.
minuses. So you write them out on an index card and put them out there, so you can have your stuff secretly planned out behind your screen.
You see, one of the greatest things I ever... Well, there are 2 or 3 great stories I have from role-playing games that I've experienced myself or heard from friends. So let's see, which one to pick out first? The first one was, eventually after you finish this, you're going to want to start writing your own stories.
Yeah.
You have what you need to do in this, or is there a bigger rule book we need to go through?
So there's a bigger rule book that'll be coming out later this year that will give you 100% of the stuff you need.
Okay.
Right.
So
you can extrapolate some of it from this.
Right.
There are people that do out of this. But
yeah. Well, one of the things I've always found with whenever you're writing your own campaigns for stuff, don't signpost everything incredibly clearly.
Yeah.
Give people the opportunity to explore, but as a GM, have yourself a little list of hooks that you can use to actually draw them in the right direction.
Well, so actually, this is one of the things that I would like to talk about with these.
Yeah,
with the player characters is on the first sheet of this. Every character has their principles. And it gives you a role-playing section for each of your principles, and then things to happen with a minor twist, things to happen with a major twist. And what this does is kind of take a little bit of the impetus off of the GM for deciding if a character rolls something and something goes wrong, the character can ask themselves these questions and go, oh, what fits with my character? What's a complication that arises from who I am?
All right. Well, let's actually introduce this particular character and talk about their motivations, just for a beginning, to show what a player should look at whenever they're doing this.
Sure.
Yeah. So who do we have here?
So this is the Wraith. Her name is Maya Montgomery, and she is a wealthy CEO that moonlights as a crime-fighting urban rogue.
Okay.
She has a lot of devices that she will use to fight crime. and sneaks around.
Okay. So, let's see. During role-playing, you can always tell when an important piece of information is being left out or obscured, though you might not know what it is.
Yeah, so this is the principle of the detective. She's got two different principles, one's of the detective, one's of stealth.
Yeah.
So this is just something that you always know is true about your character.
Yeah. So basically, if we get to a point where we're interrogating somebody, this is the character you want to be up front, and if the GM says, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't tell you that, or, they tell you something, but it feels like you should maybe push a little more. This is the character that would know that and would know to push more.
And it also actually gives her an ability on the second page, under the principle of the detective, that if she's overcoming to learn hidden information, she gets to use her best die with that.
Yeah.
So she's better at doing exactly that.
All right, well, let's actually talk mechanics then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's say we've just started the scenario 1.
Yeah.
So what's happening, and what are the first things we need to know?
So as you're going into it, what'll happen just at the very beginning of the scene is you'll go through, and I always have everyone describe where their character is, what they're kind of doing at the time, and then all of a sudden, some little spider robots start showing up.
Okay.
And that's the only spoiler that I'll give it. That's the very beginning of the first scene, right?
Yeah.
So as you're doing that, then you're going to choose what you're going to do. And every time you're doing any actions in this game, there's just a very small set that you can choose from. You can choose to attack something. So if I'm next to this spider robot and I'm going to attack them, I can make that attack action. And that's trying to punch them out and get rid of these minions. Or you can try to make a boost, like help an ally be better at something, basically give them a plus.
So basically shout, look out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you can do something like, oh, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna throw over here. I'm gonna throw a weapon over here, or some kind of armor over here that'll give you armor. Or,
I'm gonna make a device that will electrify your gauntlets, or something like that.
Yeah, anything you can declare that you can do. You can also do a hinder, like I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna drop some glue on the spiders so that they can't do stuff, or something that makes it harder.
Knock some rubble on them.
If we were playing the Wraith here, say they've just shown up and I decide, okay, I want to use my principle of stealth and fade into the shadows so they don't notice me just yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's only 3 people in the room, so we're playing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do that, and you can say, oh, that's what I'm going to do. So then I'd say, okay, well, what I would say that probably is an overcome action. Yeah. Right? So an overcome action is one we haven't talked about yet. That's where you're trying to, you're not punching your way through something, you're trying to like solve a problem some other way. So then what I'd say to you is, okay, so what you're going to need to do is build a dice pool. Yeah. And the dice pool is built out of a power, a quality, and a status.
Okay. Well, let's put this under here. So we've got our power, our quality, our status.
Right. So first, so you describe what you're doing, and this is all again driven by the player. So you tell me what you're doing first, just like you did, and then we build a dice pool based on that. So okay. So what power? These are your powers here. Powers are things that are that you're like super at. Basically,
honestly, I'm trying to fit into the shadows, so I would say I would probably run with agility because I'm trying to just be sneaky and stealthy and quiet. So that would be something I would need to be quite agile for.
Perfect. So then you're going to grab a D8 in your die pool from agility. Then you're going to choose a quality, and quality is something that you're particularly skilled at. Yeah. So in this case, you're trying to fade into the shadows.
Almost
certainly stealth.
Yeah, definitely stealth.
Right.
So I'll grab a D10.
So that's a D10. And then finally we go into status. And status is either your personal status or the status of the scene in general. Yeah. And green is when you're doing just fine. Yeah. Or the scene in general is like, there's a little bit of stuff going on, but it's not too bad. Yeah. Yellow is when, I'm a little bit injured and things are a little bit rough. Or there's
starting to go wrong.
Things starting to go wrong in the scene. And red is really dire. Like, I am really bleeding out, taking a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Or like,
we're in the middle of a volcano that's about to explode.
Right. So it's sort of a stress level indicator.
Exactly, right. Yeah. And so right now, at the very beginning of the very first scene, it's going to be a green status. So you're going to take this D10 for your
So I would roll 1D8, 2D10.
Exactly. So roll those 3 dice out there. Yep. And the die that usually matters, if you're not using some special ability, is the mid die. So basically the middle number that you rolled. Yeah. So if you roll like a 1, a 4, and a 6, that 4 is what's going to be relevant, for example. So anyway, so that's that. You take that mid die then, trying to make it this overcome action, and that is exactly where your reference comes in. So you see what happens is, if you're making an overcome, and you're over here, and you look at overcomes, and you rolled a 4. The effect die result is a 4. That means that the action succeeds, but with a minor twist. So you're able to fade into the shadows, but there's a minor twist. And this is where you can suggest a minor twist, or I as the GM can suggest a minor twist.
So this is where I would go back to the front and go, so this is principle of stealth I would be using.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I would say, minor twist, what evidence did I just leave behind?
Yeah. Right.
And that's a question for you as a player
to answer, and the answer can be a minor twist. So they're both kind of inspirations for those kind of things. Like you stealth in there. What evidence of where you are did you leave behind?
Yeah.
What
what
other minor
noise
bad
would I
thing
have
happens?
made on my way? Say, I mean, she's wearing a cloak. Say, I'm moving away into the shadows, but my cape's the last thing to go in, and the bugs can just about see a last flap of it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's perfect, exactly. So then you do that as a minor twist. And so as the GM, I'll take that minor twist, but a twist can never negate the action that you did.
Yeah.
So I'll
if
never
you succeed at your stealth.
Right.
You're hidden, and they might see your cloak, but they might go around that corner and not see you, but they'll be on the lookout for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it might draw them further towards me, which is maybe something I don't want.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they send a transmission to some other bots that are somewhere else in the city that know, like, there's another hero going around somewhere doing something like that.
Right.
So it's totally up to me as a GM to decide what they'll do. But
This sounds. Now I know you have stats and stuff in here, but this is starting to feel quite Nordic LARP style.
yes, it is.
Which I
It
quite
is.
like.
It is very, very story driven. How it works. So there's the number of actions you have are very simple, right? There's attack, boost, hinder, and overcome.
Yeah.
Basically, and then there's a recover health action, right? And so that's all that you've got.
That's incredible.
And so you kind of, and it's all driven, it's driven first by what you say you want to do in the story, right? So it makes it really easy to GM, which I really like.
Yeah.
Because if someone's coming along and you're like, your players go off in some crazy direction you never expected, they're like, they become convinced, like, I'm gonna hack into these spider bots and I'm gonna find out something about some other thing, or like they go by and they decide a minor twist is there's some criminals, some common criminals over there doing some kind of thing. And then someone else gets convinced those common criminals, like, I gotta go stop them. And you're like, okay, sure, I need some common criminals with guns.
Yeah.
Well, I can just grab an index card, write on it, these will be D6 minions.
Okay.
And I'll write D6 minions. Boom, I've got some D6 minions that are common criminals. Sure, I just made those up. Go for it.
Yeah. I had a whole subplot in one game in which they were trying to fight these robots and ended up creating a bunch of surrounding damage to the area and blowing up tanker trucks, and so they're having to put out the fires of their own making. And this is all things I didn't make up. I said, okay, well, you have a major twist from that, and they say, all right, well, I blew up this tanker truck and now there's a huge fire here. So it really lets them be the architect of their own destruction. And you just sort of guide them along in that.
I can just imagine how crazy this could get. I mean, like, okay, so Warren in the office, you've met him, our boss. Yeah, so we used to play D&D the odd time, and he would play a wizard who was a shapeshifter, and who once in a while during a scenario would transform into what he named a Sharkarosaurus. So a bipedal land shark.
Wow.
So I mean, like, if you give this man the ability to do this kind of thing, like this kind of a role-playing game, this guy might turn up, or he may make some new form of unknown beastie, Oh, look, the tanker truck was filled with some form of mutagenic ooze. By the way, there's some turtles crawling along there.
Yes, exactly. And that will work as a major twist. Like maybe you need to succeed on a major twist. You only roll a 3 on your overcome. You're like, sure, whatever. And then something crazy happens, and then another challenge comes over here, and it's all very story driven like that.
And you have the option in that with a major twist of failing. You can say, no, it's not worth it. I need. It's better for me to mitigate the surrounding damage and just take the failure. But sometimes you just really need to succeed in what you're doing.
Yeah, but you can also have comedic things where you're trying to stealth into a shadow, but you trip on your cape.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I find that like a lot of the time you can tell players that they will almost never not take the major twist because it's what makes the story most interesting.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying the way it's giving you a very simple framework to build stories, because the story, it doesn't matter what you're saying, you can subdivide it into one of those actions and say, well, this is the type of action you're doing. You're now on to these 3 steps to actually get what you need to figure out if it's worked or not.
Right.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And it's so narrative because it's built around what the abilities of each character are within certain aspects of what they're doing, and it just this blends together really nicely. I think this is going to be incredibly easy to play. Yeah,
it's easy to play and it's so fun. And one of the other things I love doing as a GM, you saw we were building that die pool, right? And for yours, it was quite straightforward, and you had very reasonable things you wanted to do, and it was pretty easy. But it's not tied to any specific thing. So if you want to do some sort of strange thing, and I always let it up to the player to convince me, sell me on it as a GM. Say you want to use, I want to use my throwing knives for some strange overcome action where I'm trying to get over there and like I've got a pizza that's over there and I really want it and I want this pizza to be over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie some wire under my throwing knives and throw them over there. So I'm going to use throwing knives.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to use I could use ranged combat or
it's investigation
yes.
to calculate the angle of the
there we go.
ground so that I can slide the pizza over with
right
it.
Exactly.
So,
and then my status, right? So you can sell the GM on whatever sort of things you want to do to build your die pool.
The start of the scenario where the bugs are crawling in, I could say, they must be coming through that vent. I'm going to throw my throwing knife at it to try and actually close the vent and maybe make it so that there's less of them coming in.
Exactly.
So I would be trying to react quite quickly. So I would say my status would probably be a yellow. I would use throwing knives, and then probably investigation.
Yeah.
Because it's being smart enough to actually notice that's happening there.
Yeah, so the only thing is you don't choose your status die. It's, it's whatever area you're in. So this is related on your health points on here, or whatever the environment is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an interesting thing that we didn't say. Yeah. So as your health points go down, your personal status changes.
The
so environment
has their own status then.
Yeah. The environment or the scenario that you're in also has a status. And it'll see, if you see over here, this is an example of one. So here's a status tracker for a scene. So scenes will have a status tracker like this, where you'll start out over here, and then every round that goes by, you go down by 1. So as soon as you get down into here, well, now it's yellow all of a sudden. You get down here, well, now it's red all of a sudden, right? And other things that can happen might accelerate that, like the bad guys, environments, whatever might accelerate that. And that affects your die up here. It also affects what abilities you have access to. So when you're in green status, you only have access to these green abilities.
Got it.
When you're in yellow, you have access to green and yellow. And when you're in red, you have access to everything.
Gotcha.
So
gotcha.
Yeah. So as things get more dire, you generally get more powerful.
Yeah.
So, this character is just a human, so it actually becomes harder for her to do things as she gets lower in health. But there are some characters that, as they get hurt, they beef up.
Yeah. See, here's a good example.
Okay.
Here's Legacy.
So
he's totally different. So his status die goes from 6 to 8 to 12.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really interesting to see the way this is so freeform. It's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's try something else with this then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say I am the GM.
Okay.
I am going to be completely honest. I have never properly GM'd anything before in my life.
Okay.
What are the best pieces of advice that we can think up of for someone who is like me, who is brand spanking new to GMing? First thing you want them to do.
So the first thing I do is for this particular game, just familiarize yourself only with this book. It's a pretty short book. It's about 16 pages, and it's a lot less than you need to learn to GM almost any other game. And so just read through that, make sure you know
this one book,
those rules, that one book, and it's got in it all that stuff we just told you, and a few other tips and things for being a GM. And the second thing that I would say is just go with what let your players guide the story, right? So you know what's kind of coming. You know what the bad guys are going to do left to their own devices. You know what's like secretly going on over there and over there that the heroes don't know about yet. But let them drive their story. So if they decide to wander over there, you know that there's a major villain doing some thing over there. Oh, let them. Well, let them run into them, right?
With something like this, there's no like playing map you're on, is there?
Right, not at all.
Right, so the map's inside the GM's head. So
exactly.
Even if they come to like a T-junction, it doesn't matter if they go left and right. They're going the way you want them to.
Exactly.
That's true.
Right.
Yes.
And you can just make stuff up that you think your characters will be fun, and let them help you make stuff up.
Yeah.
Your characters are your best asset for story in this particular RPG.
Yeah.
What I find works really well also is if you want them to investigate something, make it seem like you don't want them to investigate it. So, like if they are looking around or something, then you might describe something a little bit off over here, but then try and redirect their attention elsewhere. And they go, "Well, wait a minute, I want to go look at that." So that happens a lot.
Yeah, I used to have people who would roleplay with me who would get analysis paralysis. They would try and analyze everything before moving anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a good way to deal with that?
So in this particular RPG, since it's a lot more freeform, there's not a map like you said either, right? You can always toss minions and dire situations that they have to overcome into the scenario to get them to move, right? To get them to do stuff.
You can create a manufactured sense of urgency.
Okay, so let's say let's put them back at the T-junction.
Yeah.
They're trying to decide, do we go left or right? Doesn't matter to you. would I say have one minion walk out from a doorway further down the corridor, look at them, and then go, uh-oh, and run away?
Absolutely.
Try and make them chase us.
Yeah, that is absolutely great. Or I might have...
Or maybe an explosion down there.
Yeah.
Or...
Right, exactly. Or I might, or like, there's a bunch of ambulances and fire trucks, like, running down over there that you see. Or you get an urgent call on your radio, because in this game, every hero just has a headset on.
Yeah.
Of course. They can talk to everyone. So then you get an ally that messages you, and you get a message in there being like, I just saw down at City Hall, there's a terrible thing going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you can put those plot hooks out there, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other good things would there be? Don't be scared to ad-lib.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, like, if your players are being a little slow to get to action, I'm always tempted to throw in like a small batch of goons, just to give them something to fight and give them a quick sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, like I said, that's super easy to do. Just make a card, boom. Yeah. And I more than adding goons, I like adding other challenges of saying like, oh, well, you've dawdled around here for far too long. This building's starting to collapse, and there's a person up there. You got to go rescue them. So, like, that's now something that I make a card for a civilian in danger and make a little box that they have to get checked.
So you got to somehow save them, and then it's up to the players how are you going to save them. I don't have to think of a solution to the problems that I present you as a GM. Like, don't be afraid to put out a problem that you don't know the solution to. Yeah. It's the player's job to sell you on a solution. Right. So then the player will come up with something, and you're like, all right, tell me your die pool for this. Tell me how you're going to make this overcome action to solve this. And then they've got to convince you.
This is going to let me be such an asshole. No, because as they're running down the street towards, City Hall or wherever the ambulances and stuff are, I'm going to have a small child walk out and go, excuse me, my cat's stuck in that tree. Can you help me?
Yeah, see? Exactly.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that. So don't be afraid to just put a bunch of stuff up there and then when your players sell you on something, like, let them convince you. Let them, as if they tell a good story, like, that's what you want, right? Yeah. Okay, great.
It's all in service of that.
You're doing some nonsense there, but it's really entertaining nonsense. Yeah. So I will let you roll those dice. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so, because you're assuming that they're all comic book heroes, right? So they can do anything, right? They just have to, like, it has to be cool.
Yeah. Yep. One thing I have found myself doing when I'm at home these days, this is something I do on my own, it's mildly embarrassing, but I actually play about with my voice a lot to actually do different voices and things.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing to do as a DM, or do some people find it really distracting?
I think it's great to do as a DM.
I love it. So I don't think you should feel like you have to if that's not your strength. Like, if you're a new GM and you're intimidated by trying to do voices or trying to make up people's names in the background, then don't do that. You don't need to. But if you are good at it, lean into what you're good at. Yeah. Like, if you practice that at home, you should absolutely do that.
I practice things like Kermit the Frog, Gollum from Lord of the Rings, Jar Jar, just really silly voices, just stretching it as far as I can.
Well, if you're making new NPCs that then sound like that will make your players remember that guy.
Yeah.
It's more than just some goon that goes, get him. If you have a goon that sounds like Kermit the Frog, that's going to stick out.
Boss, why are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we here? They're hitting me. I'm running away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you can bring that goon back later, and they go, oh, it's that one.
Yeah. And then something that's fun to do as a GM too is you take that guy, if they latch onto something, like a throwaway goon you made, absolutely save him and have him come back like 2 adventures later, and now he's a lieutenant that has more powers and it's harder to work.
If you could slowly escalate him to your main villain, that's the best.
Well, you see, I would be tempted to do, for the voices I do, I would be tempted to do a comedy relief side character who just turns up for just to break tension or something once in a while. So just the whole Megatron, Starscream, you have failed me for the last time, and Starscream's just always turning up and things are going wrong.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else we can think of?
Not really. If you do that kind of stuff, it's pretty easy to run, and it's set up to be ideally easy to run. The only other thing I was going to mention, actually, as I noticed this, is that if you really do want to know more about the lore of the story, there's actually Adam and then Christopher, who the two of them created this universe. They have a podcast called The Letters Page that they do every week, like a 2-hour episode talking about the lore of this universe. So this is a free podcast they've got.
It's nice to have things to actually listen to while you're painting, and if this is something you're wanting to get into, paint up some stuff, and actually have this on in the background, you can really
each episode is about 2 hours long and is about an individual character from the world.
So this world, so they made Christopher and Adam made a card game based in it, and then we made this based in it, but there's secretly behind it that
don't give away secrets.
Entirely, not even secret, but for our own purposes, for making have this verisimilitude. there's this entire history of a fake comic book company
Really?
that we have internally written down.
So if you look at the issue numbers on these, this is Freedom 5 number 802.
Yeah.
There are 801 issues before that
Right.
that we've
So
basically
you have the
plotted
story
out.
written out.
Yeah.
You just haven't storyboarded them around
Right.
like that.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
they're not published comics. It's just
And
It's all
suddenly
this
everyone
internal.
on the internet just said, publish the comics!
Right, yeah. So we had a room twice the size of this,
Yeah.
filled with Post-it notes on the walls, dating every single comic book issue in the entire fake publishing history of this comic book going back to 1940.
Yeah.
So we know
May
that,
of 1940, we had Justice Comics number 1 come out, and then we put every
and which ones line up, and which issues go where, and all of that backs up this stuff. And you don't need to know that to run it, but
at all.
Christopher and Adam know it,
Cool.
and so they have a podcast about it because it's cool.
Yeah.
This is the thing I always find incredibly cool is whenever a world like this, so many people look at it and go, oh, it's just a standalone thing.
Mhm.
They don't realize there is a living, breathing, beating
Yeah.
heart world behind it.
Yeah.
It's
So actually getting to hear how far you guys go to actually see it living there, doing like the Sherlock Holmes wall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And we had we didn't have strings on there, but we had orange Post-it notes
Yeah.
that symbolized strings.
So you
It
could
said,
see
this
where the-
goes with this. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit, this has got me very curious for this role-playing game. I do want to get sat down and get a run-through of this with you guys at some time.
Mhm.
absolutely.
I might even give a go at GMing if I get confident enough with it, if I'm willing to put myself out there and do the silly voices
You
on
can do it.
camera
Yeah.
and
I have faith in you.
give my hand a try at ad-lib story running while running a campaign. I think it's this one in particular feels so light compared to other role-playing games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that has stopped me in the past
Mhm.
from actually GMing is feeling that it's so heavy being the GM, you have to control so much.
Right.
Mhm.
But talking to you guys, it sounds like just a really great rubber band game where it's just you're drawing back and forth from your players
Yeah.
to let it grow and evolve naturally.
And we're dealing with superheroes. We're not.
Yeah.
It's not gritty fantasy. We don't need +1 -1 on everything. And we wanted it to feel super super thematic and over the top, and that the sky's the limit in what you can do. So
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
last interesting thing I once heard about someone doing during a role-playing game,
Yeah.
right? So at the beginning of the game, one of the characters accidentally got killed. Right? Got
Okay.
himself killed by doing something very stupid.
Mhm.
The GM didn't tell the other players.
Mhm.
Instead, the GM had the person stay alive-ish, but they were passing notes back and forth under the table of the GM saying, okay, you are now my minion, I'm controlling you via necromancy.
Yeah.
And the player passing it back going, yep, that's not a problem, I'm quite happy to play this and play the villain. Is it worth doing things like that, having that kind of a subterfuge run through?
If you have an experienced GM and experienced players, you absolutely could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and those sort of betrayals are very memorable.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, there was one I played where I was playing Paranoia,
Yeah.
and it was a competition game at a convention, a local one here in Ireland. So we sit down, start playing through, and at one point during the game, everybody was really badly hurt, and we were looking for who the medic was. I was a dumbass. I hadn't read my sheet, didn't realize I was the medic. So I was sitting there, physically going, look, the GM says we have a medic. Who the hell is the medic here? The GM saying nothing. He's just sitting there smiling to himself going, this is absolutely fantastic. And at the end of it, I actually won that competition because of that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's moments like that that I will always remember from role-playing games,
Yeah.
and it's why I love them and want to play more of them.
Mhm.
All right, I think the only thing left to do is pass it out to the community. Do you like your role-playing games? What are your top tips for new GMs? And what do you think of this system? Because it sounds very light, very fun to me, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it as well. And I'm sure the guys here would love to hear it as well.
Yeah.
We'll move on. We'll see you again soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming Let's Plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.